Hi, Sally Walker here, your hormone and slow age expert. So we are talking about mitochondria, and we've been talking a little bit about their jobs and ATP production, etc. So what screws them up? What is not good for your mitochondria? What do you need to avoid at all costs, I would say, okay? So let's start with genetics. Yes, there is a genetic influence. So some may have these genetic variations, these genetic weaknesses, but this will be very obvious already from childhood. And there's not much we can do about that. But what other things we can? So avoiding these chemicals, these xenoestrogens, these other types of chemicals, in the plastics and in the creams and all this kind of thing, all kinds of toxins. So be very careful with that because they can have a very negative effect on the mitochondria. So the pesticides, the herbicides, the mycotoxins, the molds, this kind of thing, all can have a very negative effect, yeah? Viruses, yes, viruses can also negatively affect the mitochondria. So the Epstein-Barr, the HIV, and even the little latest one we're called COVID can also have an effect on mitochondria. So think about this with the long COVID, as they're calling it. Some of these unfortunate people who are struggling to recover after the viral infection are having this long COVID. Could it be that their mitochondria have taken injury from the actual virus? I think it could be, because fundamentally, as you know, if the mitochondria are not working properly, if they're not producing ATP, then the cell is not going to be able to do its job. And depending on where the little cell is, which organ it's associated with, there will be organs and other chemical pathways which don't work properly. So that's probably the level we need to be looking at for these people with long COVID. Parasites, heavy metals could be a problem. Certain medications, especially certain antibiotics, are actually used in the testing of mitochondrial function. And you can see that under testing mitochondria in an article in the blog. Chronic inflammation, chronic oxidative stress. So not having enough antioxidants, for example, to combat the oxidative stress or the free radicals. Anti-inflammatories, not having enough of those in the diet, especially fish oils, so the omega-3 fatty acids would be a very positive here. Lack of oxygen, so if you're relatively hypoxic, now this can be used to your advantage, as I've talked about in an article called Hormesis. Now that's a really interesting one, so have a little look at that article, because we can use things like hypoxia to actually create more mitochondria, but it's just short term. So if you're long term lower in oxygen, so this is going to have a negative effect on your mitochondria. If you're low iron, if you don't have enough glucose, don't have enough fats, don't have enough amino acids kind of thing, you don't have enough of these to feed the mitochondria. As I said before, the B vitamins, that would be a negative if you don't have enough of those. Not having enough magnesium, that's another one. Oxalates in the diet can have a negative effect. So oxalates are found primarily in plant foods. So be very careful with plant foods, especially if they are raw. And there is an article on my webpage, The Dark Side of Plant Foods, that you might like to have a little look at as well. And there is a link in the article about that. Not getting enough sleep, I mean, that's not good for anybody. Getting too much alcohol, smoking, I mean, as I said many times, there's nothing good to say about smoking. And it definitely is negative for your mitochondria, as is chronic stress and also over exercising. Okay, so exercise is really important. It's one of the good things for your mitochondria, but getting too much exercise is a bad thing. Why? Because when you exercise, you need to produce more energy, and as you produce more energy, you produce more free radicals. And if you don't have the antioxidants to fix the free radicals, you're going to create oxidative stress, and that's going to have a negative effect on your mitochondria. So you're not going to be able to exercise as much long term. Anyway, have a look at the article. It's all written down, a nice long list of what screws up your mitochondria. And at the same time, have a little of the article called Minding and Mending Your Mitochondria, because this is where you get all the tips of what you need to do to make your mitochondria as powerful as possible. Happy hormones, happy life.